Good morning. Welcome to SEC Basketball Reaction. I'm your host, Chris Lee, joined by Blake Lovell. I think Max Barr is going to join us.
Max is
no, he's not. Okay, he's already on the road. Okay, so it's just me and you. I'm going to presume you spent your night like I did, staying up late, rethinking your bracket guesses, researching some teams you didn't know. Maybe it's just me, but that's the fun of March, Blake. I cannot wait for this tournament to get started. It does start tomorrow night. But I spent my night reviewing my bracket, making some revisions. And, boy, this is going to be an interesting tournament. I like the fact that I look at these matchups sometimes and I don't know what to do. I think, to me, that makes a competitive and interesting tournament.
Well, this is why, as we welcome everyone in, this is why we don't use our gut bracket picks for our official picks, because you have to go back and do a little work after the fact. So I can tell you, based on our 3.5-hour live stream last night, I have changed quite a few picks from the gut bracket. So I will say that up front. We're not making our official picks today. We will do what we always do each year. We will do an entire show dedicated to our official full bracket picks, but that will come probably, I think we usually do that on Wednesday or early Thursday morning. So just letting you guys know. That is the scenario of how we usually do it. So, but I think as I looked at some of these matchups, my opinion changed a bit for some of these SEC teams and the road that they have to get to where they want to be. And we know that is for everybody wanting to get to the Final Four. And so, so I think that once you look at these a little bit more, you see how these lines are moving a bit, comes a bit more interesting with some of these matchups.
Well, and I was kind of laughing. I guess I looked miserable yesterday as I was trying to make my picks. I just don't know the teams outside the SEC like as well as you guys do. So I was having a harder time. I was having to scramble, look at KenPom and stuff. Now that I've had a night to look at all that and familiarize myself with the other teams, I feel a lot better about making picks. But that's relative. I mean, I had a lot of trouble picking a lot of these games. Let me ask you something. What is something that occurred to you either for the SEC or the bracket or just some observations you had that popped between when we went off air last night and this morning? Anything change in your thinking?
Ole Miss, the team that I was calling a sleeper Elite Eight team. I don't know. Max and I kept saying we were just going to put Ole Miss in the Elite Eight about 2 months ago, and we were like, we don't even care what the bracket looks like. But the more I look at the bracket, I actually don't mind that idea, and I know you did it in the gut bracket, but I'm telling you, the more I look at the draw for Ole Miss, other than the fact that they got to play one of those teams that we always see that can get hot after the first 4 game, whether it's San Diego State or North Carolina, I just think stylistically things set up pretty well for Ole Miss because you're playing teams potentially in Michigan State, Iowa State, if you're trying to get to the Elite Eight, something like that. How do those teams play? Right? Like, what's the strength of both of those teams? It's the defense. Like, defensively, like, there are strong suits there. Now, not to say, I mean, Iowa State's a top 20 offensive team to Michigan State's a top 30 offensive team. But I think the way those teams play, I don't hate it that much for Ole Miss. And I think that was one of the things initially that I looked at. I'll tell you one thing that didn't change. And I know this is like, where's Sam Smith when he joins in? Because he's going to hear this and think, what is this guy thinking? My opinion has maybe even gotten stronger on Tennessee. I know it's Tennessee. I know everybody's going to point out Rick Barnes, and that is certainly going to be the one thing that can hold you back. And shocker that Sven here, noted Mississippi State fan, is all in on Ole Miss getting beat. I'm really shocked by that, Chris. I'm shocked that Sven is going to go all in there with that idea. But no, we appreciate Sven always jumping on as well. But yeah, I think for Tennessee, I'm just looking at the matchups. And I know somebody in here said Wofford money line. They're going Wofford money line, John Diz, right off the bat with the Terriers.
I think Blake's internet may have gone out. Or maybe my internet went out.
I think somebody's internet's going out. That's how it usually works here.
That is. I think it's mine.
Yeah, I think it is. You're getting frozen on my side, but that's all right. I think it's going to be interesting with Tennessee because I like the matchups. The difference with this Wofford team, based on looking at them a little bit, we've seen a Wofford team in the past have success, right? But this team is the one thing I will say. If we are looking up and like my strength and belief in Tennessee goes down a little bit, and let's say we were to see a scenario where it's like an almost upset, or maybe even the upset, right? We've seen 215 before. The one thing I will say, Chris, Wofford shoots a lot of threes. And anytime you get those kind of scenarios, 27%, or they're 27th in the country, they get 39% of their points from three. We've seen that before, right? Teams comes out, bombs away, just starts hitting three after three after three. Something to think about, but it's a pretty slow-paced team, 335th nationally, 19 seconds per offensive possession. So if you get a slowed-down game, not a lot of possessions, teams hitting threes, you never know. But Ole Miss, I feel a little bit better about. Tennessee, I feel even better about. So,
okay, I had thoughts on both those teams overnight too, and I changed on one, and it's not the one I thought I would change on. And hear me out on this, okay? There's God, I'm not him, so I'm just trying to figure out how it's going to go. When you guys said Ole Miss to the 8 for a while, I had been like, okay, let's see what the matchup is. I just did not think they had been consistent enough. Blake, sometimes the bracket kind of picks itself. That's the way I do it. I don't usually go into mine with a predetermined outcome unless it's like last year where I thought we've seen what Connecticut will do. I don't really care who's in their way. I'm picking Connecticut. Okay, first off, I'll take Ole Miss to get through its first game. I mean, as much as we've made North Carolina a punching bag, North Carolina is talented enough to beat Ole Miss. But I'm taking Ole Miss there. They get Iowa State in round 2. And Iowa State's got a major injury to, who's it, Keyshawn Gilbert? Yeah, that's who it is. So I get that. I think they maybe played a little bit without him. And I think Lipsy's got a groin pull too. And I don't think it's going to keep him out, but those things are really tricky. So Ole Miss has got a guy in Sean Padula that I think is a big-time point guard. They got a guy in Dia who can bust out and have a huge scoring game. Maybe it's a risk. Iowa State's going to be favored, but I'm taking Ole Miss to get past an Iowa State team that I think will get past Lipscomb. Then you get to Michigan State. And you had me thinking a lot about Michigan State overnight, Blake. I mean, I really looked them up. They've been so consistent. They're so good on the defensive end. But at the end, I have a really hard time picking a team that's a horrible shooting team from three, and Michigan State's in that 320 range. I'm not saying these teams Ole Miss are playing are bad, but I can see a matchup, a scenario where Ole Miss gets the Elite Eight because of who it plays, and I stuck with that one overnight.
No, I think it's fair. I think that they're kind of an interesting one. I feel like they've, again, been a team we talked about a lot over the past little bit, and it's all about the draw. We always say that, and again, we will probably change our picks 10 times before we get to Thursday maybe, as we keep looking more and more at these matchups. But I think Ole Miss stylistically, it's about the style. To me, I feel like they're in a bracket where the style meshes well with what they can do. And but again, like I say, it's always tricky playing that team that maybe goes out and finds a little confidence in that first 4 game, like maybe a San Diego State or North Carolina. Maybe North Carolina comes out with something to prove. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hearing about how, I mean, we've seen this scenario play out before. But just to quickly, though, go back to the Tennessee side of things. So I was trying to find the number on Wofford, and yeah, I thought it was. They shoot about 29 threes a game. And I think that's something where, again, if you catch them on the wrong night and they're hitting shots, because that is a game where they're going to try to slow you down, that's the one thing. I'm not trying to make Tennessee fans nervous. Remember, you guys are probably not going to like a lot of what we say when we're previewing these games, because I know what the thought's going to be. Well, come on, we're going to go out and beat these teams by 40. And it's very well possible. But our job this week is to make you our job this week is to make you as nervous as we can make you, to make sure you're prepared for the opponent. That's what we're trying to do this week. So if you think we're underselling your team, remember, we've been doing this since November, every single day. We know how good the SEC teams are, but we are trying to tell you how good these other teams are. and try to make a case for the matchup and why it could be interesting if it winds up being interesting. So that's sort of what we're going to be doing this week. So again, I think if you look at these kind of scenarios, this is what you have to go by when you're doing this. Now, there is one thing I will bring up. I put this stat out last night on Twitter. If you're looking by each region and you filter, remember, we always talk about our friend Bart Torvik. If you filter Bart over the past month, since February the 16th, so I put this out last night, the past month, Chris, of play, I went in and found the top 25 teams in Bart Torvik over the past month, okay? This is kind of an interesting thing, and I'm going to share this tweet with you because you're going to see which region actually has the one that have the teams that are playing the best. And I think this is always fascinating because this is going to be important, all right, when it comes to this. So let me see if I can pull it up here because I want to show you that I think this is kind of where you need to kind of pay attention here in some of these regions for the teams that are playing hot right now. They're on a hot streak, and there's one that's going to surprise you. And one of these 1Cs is going to be sitting here saying, oh, no, how did we get put in this spot? Here it comes. So, Chris, as you see here, if we start at the top, and I wish I could make this bigger, but I can't. In the East, this is what, so the number I have beside here is how well these teams are playing, okay? And this is how they're ranked in Bart Torvik over the past month, all right? In the East, Duke, number 1. BYU, number 4. They're a 6 seed. Don't forget that.
Smokes.
Alabama is sitting there. I think that's a 6. My eyes can't tell.
It is.
Wisconsin, 17. Arizona, 18. VCU, 23. BYU, VCU playing each other in the 6-11 game. One of those teams getting knocked out. So
contrast to styles, too.
Interesting thing there. Now look at the Midwest. Houston, 2. The 2 teams that are the next closest are their potential next opponent. Georgia or Gonzaga. Houston is 2. Georgia is 7th in the country in Bart Torvik since the past month. The Zags are 11. Man. Those teams are matching up in there. Keep that in mind. Tennessee is 15th. Xavier 19th. Kentucky 21. Clemson 22. Now, the Midwest gets a little bit more interesting. Something to consider there in the Midwest. Now,
yes.
Look at the South. Michigan State is 5. Auburn is 9. Iowa State is 12. North Carolina is 14. Louisville is 24. But all things considered, I think if you're Auburn and you're looking at that, but if you're looking at that, if you're Auburn, I'm feeling pretty good right now. Because, if those are the top 25 beyond, maybe that second game, I'm not hating this right here. Because like we said, if we think there's potential pitfalls for Michigan State or Iowa State, those teams got to knock each other out. So something to consider. Now, if we go down to the West, kind of got a similar setup, right? Everybody's talking about how the West is going to be wild, and well, you've got Florida playing at number 3. I think you've got Colorado State at 8.
It's a 12.
Maryland
is the 8.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Maryland at 10. Texas Tech at 13. St. John's at 16. So now again, this is just one computer ranking and all that, but I think it is kind of interesting to look at that and see.
Pull that back up if you don't mind.
The Midwest is kind of the one that's a little more fascinating here, to say the least. So,
okay, what you said there was a shocker. I think there's a few things that really jumped out, but what was the thing here that shocked you the most?
I think it's just if you look at the which region has the most teams playing the best based on the computers over the past month, it's the Midwest.
Yeah,
and it's Georgia sitting there at 7. It's the Zags at 11. And if you're looking at a potential 1 seed, Houston's number 2, though, right? So it's like you can say, well, that's bad news for Houston, but they're playing the second best basketball per this metric of anybody. And so, as much as we like the path for some of these teams, you also have to compare it around with the other teams who are playing the best. And so you've got the most teams in the Midwest that are in Torvik's top 25 over the past month. So that may be the region that produces the most interesting results, or just the teams at the top, advance. So,
well, leave this up for a minute because I want to just articulate some thoughts here, and I do want to touch on Tennessee because I had some thoughts on them too. I'll just start the order that you got them in. One of the switches I made overnight was having Houston come out of the Midwest and not just that, but win it. I'm shocked to see Tennessee at 15. I would not have guessed that. Georgia, I knew had played well. I did not know it had played that well. This is the region to me that I had the toughest time with. I mean, I had a fit making almost all these picks.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not as – I think if Georgia Gonzaga plays well in that first game, and not to say that you're like, okay, well, of course they're going to have to play well to win, but if you get one of these games where one of these teams come out and they're clicking on all cylinders, like I'm telling you, I would not look past that second game against Houston and feel like Houston's just going to breeze by here. I think there's something to this, how well those teams have played. But I think, to me, like if you're a Kentucky fan, that Xavier one is a little interesting to me.
Yeah. Zach Freemantle.
Because that's a potential second round matchup maybe, depending on how it shakes out up there. So, yeah, I think the Midwest is a little more fascinating than I thought. And again, this is just one metric. You can filter a lot of numbers and make it work. I also, by the way, I'm not going to bring this up, but I'll just tell you, based on breaking down the numbers, if you want the average KenPom rating, we're getting deep into the weeds here, of the top 8 seeds in each of the 4 regions, here's what it looks like. The South, the average rating is 17.6. The West, 19.2. The East, 17.9. The Midwest, 14.6. So that's why you're seeing this there on that. So,
yeah, back to Tennessee. I think the game I'm having the hardest time with down the line is if Tennessee and Kentucky meet in the 16. Because, look, I think Tennessee's the better team. I think it's the more complete team. I think you've got the Lamont Butler factor. But Kentucky, for whatever reason, it was almost like throw out who's hurt. Throw out where the game is, it doesn't matter. Like whatever sometimes you didn't expect them to do, they would do. And then you have that series history, Blake. I mean, Kentucky has won, 5 of the last 6 matchups against Tennessee?
The chat will tell you the exact number.
Yeah, but here's where I'm going. When I'm making picks and I'm dealing with uncertainty, and look, I may change it again. I may flip on this game 10 times between now and tip-off because I really think Tennessee's good. I really think with the right draw, Tennessee could get in the Final Four. But I said, hey, you want to look at the matchups. And I see Houston at the top of that bracket being able to do what Tennessee does, but better. I just see some in Kentucky in that potential matchup. The thing that I do when I can't make up my mind, I go, okay, I got to make a pick and live with it. In which of these outcomes would make me feel the stupidest if I missed, if that makes sense? In other words, if I pick Tennessee and they beat Kentucky, the thing I'm going to kick myself for saying is, well, of course I should have picked Kentucky. They've got Tennessee's number. And I think that's kind of where I've settled for now. But there's a part of me that says stuff doesn't go on forever, right? Streaks break. Tennessee's playing awfully well. I think it's a more complete team than it was a year ago. And look, I think Illinois, if Illinois is playing well, it's got a guard that can give them problems. I think not having Butler obviously is a detriment to them. I'm just littered with uncertainty all over the Midwest bracket, other than maybe Houston. But, I mean, I say that. I mean, Houston could draw Clemson. I thought McNeese might beat Clemson, but I looked at that matchup a little bit more. It feels like it favors Clemson. Clemson popped up as, 22 on your list a minute ago. And Bart Torvik over the last month, it's got, a team that has got a lot of guys back from a team that went there a year ago. I'm sorry to talk so much, but that Midwest region to me is just fascinating for a number of reasons.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think it's the NCAA tournament. Like, let's call it what it is. Like, it's like this comment here, right? I mean, we'll have fun with it, but like, it says you got to change your pick 10 times, but y'all know everything. LOL. No,
Hey,
we
I'll
don't
be
know
first to
everything.
tell you I
Have
don't
you
know
ever
everything.
have you ever watched the NCAA tournament? I've seen a
Yeah.
16 beat a 1. I've seen George Mason go to the Final Four, like all this other stuff. Who the hell knows what's going to happen in this tournament? We just sit here
Yeah.
and base it on what we see, right? And I think that's what makes it so fun is that we don't know everything. No one knows everything about how this tournament's going to play out. And that's the fun of it is that, we look at all these different matchups and I think it's just so fascinating. And the Skylar had the comment here a minute ago. Yeah, you might as well just base your picks based on the team colors rather than use the
Yeah.
metrics because you can get so confused that you can find a metrics to support any argument you want for any of these teams. And I just think it's one of those things where when you start to, and I think this year's different because it's the SEC and there's 14 teams in. And, I mean, we've seen, because we've watched the SEC so much, is that we've seen the good of these teams and we've seen the bad. The bad's been worse for other teams. Some at the top has not been that bad, but, some in the middle, lower seeds, sure, we've seen these teams be here and be like, oh, man, yikes. So anything can happen with these teams, and so it's going to be interesting. So it's going to be kind of fun to see how it plays out. But I don't know.
The only thing I'm confident in is that I'm going to be really displeased with my bracket probably
I
no
don't care
later
about
than
my
noon
bracket.
Friday.
Like,
Yeah, I mean,
I've said
this is
last
fun.
year. I don't care about my bracket. I don't care if the bracket's right or wrong. Like, don't even care a single bit. I do care about Optimistic Rattlesnake. We're going to give him a good morning. He's an SEC champion. Good morning to the Rattlesnake who's here. And also, I think Malik brings up a good point, and we brought up the stat a minute ago. People are saying the West bracket's the hardest. Again, the number I brought up actually says the West bracket is the easiest in terms of the top 8 seeds, based on if you do the computer rankings and all that and average them out. It's not going to be easy, but of the group, like it does have the highest of that number, which means that it is, not as tough as the Midwest, who has the lowest. So, I think, and that's where, like, look, if we get Florida, UConn, it's that, right? I mean, the facts are that you're playing a back-to-back national championship coach. UConn is not what they were last year. They're not what they were the year before, but it's there, and it's a storyline to work with. Now, basketball-wise, Florida is simply better, and they have been all season. Will it play out that way? We'll find out. But, yeah, I think, again, there are different storylines in all these regions, and that's what makes it pretty fun in terms of how this thing can play out. So, it is an interesting. I'm going to start this comment. It's pretty good. Quickly, we're going to get to this too from Joshua. $20 super chat. Remembers a point in the season when the Big Blue Nation said Arkansas was finished. Then February 1 happened. Great season from Cal, considering the circumstances. Amazing coaching job with basically 6 players. Big Z doesn't count.
What?
How does Big Z not count, Josh? What is going on here? No, we
You don't
appreciate
lose them in the crowd, that's for sure.
We appreciate the contributions as always. But all right, here's an interesting comment because like we were just gonna we talked about this for 3.5 hours yesterday, but we just wanted to do something for you guys this morning. But there is kind of a fun one here. All right, Senior Joshua here. You guys should power rank each team's road to the Final Four. So if we go like who has the easiest path, who has the hardest path based on the way it shakes out. Okay. That's going to be a tough challenge. But, I mean, I think we could probably say if we're starting at the toughest, right? If we break it down that way. I mean, you're probably going to go with – I'm going to go Vanderbilt as the toughest for me because that means they got to go through Alabama after round 1.
Which is a bad matchup for them because Alabama can do everything that they want to do, but just do it better. Bama's got some height. I mean, and then BYU, if they were to get by Alabama, is red hot right now. I don't like Missouri's path.
I was gonna say we don't need to spend time on every matchup, but like I think it's pretty clear to be like Vanderbilt's got a tough, Texas got a tough path, like Oklahoma, like all these teams. Like I think it's pretty obvious we're not gonna rank them at the top. But if we go by let's say the top seeds, who has the hardest path, who has the easiest path, and maybe that's the best way to do it. So, again, I don't want to call any path easy because I think that's tough.
No.
But if we're ranking them, we got to rank them here. I mean, I don't hate Florida's path. Like, I'm just being honest. Like, I know we're talking UConn maybe in the second round, but I do not hate the path for Florida. I've said my thoughts on Tennessee. I don't hate their path at all. I know Kentucky fans aren't going to like this, but like, I wouldn't just completely, say Kentucky's an automatic to advance to the Sweet 16, because I do think Illinois or Xavier is tricky for different reasons. But, I can't say I hate it, though. I don't hate that draw for Kentucky. I think, to me, based on, like, potential, like, Elite Eight, I guess that's the thing, though. You got to get them to San Antonio. Alabama versus Duke would be tough, but I like Alabama's path to the Elite Eight, even with BYU in there, who's playing really well, as we said, because BYU could get knocked out in the first round by VCU.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the SEC from a draw standpoint, and this is where, if we say this and teams come up short, then it's going to be disappointing, because I don't feel like anyone I'm just looking at and saying, man, they have no shot of these top tier teams. I'm not saying that's, and look, you could even make the case for Texas A&M and say, well, they've already beaten Auburn, right? Everybody was saying that last week. I've said I don't have the same confidence level that some people have, or not last week, yesterday. Feels like last week. I mean, look, if you're saying, hey, A&M's the 4 seed, if you advance the top seeds, they play a team as the 1 who they've already beaten. But I'm not all the way there on that just yet. So,
okay, let's stick with the 1s and the 2s in the SEC. That would be Auburn and Florida are your 1s, and Alabama and Tennessee are your 2s. Rank the paths easiest to hardest.
Okay. Easiest we're talking to get to the Final Four, right?
Yes.
Okay. I've got to go Florida right now just because of the way they're playing. I'll go. Who would you put at 1?
Well, okay, let me clarify. I was thinking of it a little differently. I was thinking just forget how good we think a team is and just look at how good the teams in their path are.
Well, but that has to matter. I can't just completely ignore it. You know what I mean?
And
I can't ignore
fair.
How well Florida's playing. So,
right.
I mean, if that was the case, yeah, it'd be completely different. Because, yeah, I'm just basing it on, okay, I have to factor both in. I have to factor the potential opponents and how well that team's playing. I don't hate the draw for Florida. Again, will I be nervous if they play UConn in the second round? Sure, I will. But I think this is something too. Everybody's really high on Maryland, and I get it. But I've seen what it looks like with Florida. So I'd put Florida probably at 1, maybe. Not a strong confidence level on that. Again, this is all going to change, probably. I don't hate Auburn's path either, for all the reasons I mentioned yesterday. I think everybody's just assuming that Louisville, like all big bad Louisville, is going to come ready to play in Lexington. They got to beat Creighton first. So I don't hate it for Auburn because, again, I said I like Auburn A&M in a rematch. I think Auburn would play better. It's not in College Station. And we talked about the bottom of the bracket, right? Potential chaos there. So I think everybody's kind of making too much of this Auburn Louisville disrespect type thing. I just think Auburn's the better team based on what we've seen. So I'd keep those 2 at the top probably in whatever order you want to put them in. And then, I mean, I've already made my case for Tennessee. I would pick Alabama. I just don't like the idea that Alabama would have to go through Duke. And I'm not calling Duke unbeatable, but I mean, look, they're pretty good. So
okay, I think I would go Auburn is the easiest path. And the whole Bart Torvik thing that you pulled up earlier, was it the South that was kind of
That was the one that had the fewest teams.
Yeah, and then you did the Ken Palm. What did that say?
The West was the easiest. The South was about the same as the East.
Okay. I think Auburn has got the relatively easier path. Although, again, if they get Louisville in Lexington, that becomes a little tougher. But Auburn played pretty well on the road this year. That's an understatement. I think Alabama's path I like best next because I think second round, we saw how that played out with them and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was just overmatched in that one. If they get St. Mary's, I just think Alabama is able to exert its tempo on anybody. If they get BYU, which is what I've got in the Elite Eight, I think they can, again, do a lot of what BYU does, but just better. And I would go next. I would go Florida with the third easiest path, but I mean, neither Maryland or Colorado State is going to be easy in the 8. And who knows with Connecticut, right? I mean, the tournament history, the coaches, Liam McNeely's back. I think they played better with them. It's not easy, but relatively, I see them as third. I think Tennessee's got the toughest just because you've got the potential of Kentucky in the Sweet 16, which has just been a stumbling block for Tennessee. And then I think you've got Houston, which is elite at the top if they get through there. And if not, I mean, it could be Clemson, Gonzaga. Gonzaga's a top 10 team in Ken Palm, an 8 seed in this thing. Clemson, we know what they can do. So I think, to me, that's how I see it.
Yeah, I think it's, again, I don't hate the draw. Not to say that these teams can't get beat at the top, but I didn't come out of that looking at the bracket and saying, man, these SEC teams are in trouble. But as we've seen before, they can be. It really can. So here's an interesting question. So our guards here, I love this. I'm glad you changed your username. Our guards aren't peas. I wonder what that is in reference to here. As a member of the It Just Means More tier. I think one of the SEC 8-9 seeds knocks off a 1. Which one do you give the best chance to do that? Because obviously we're talking about Mississippi State is an 8-9 against Baylor. They would play Duke in the second round. Then you've got UConn against Oklahoma as the 9. They would play Florida in the second round. Then you've got Houston playing either Gonzaga or Georgia. I'm going to go Georgia. Can you believe I said that?
I think that's, I know. I mean, if people weren't around for it, when you throw out the Bart Torvik teams that are best over the last month, I think Georgia was 7. I'm going to give you a scenario, and I think you've got the right answer, but let's just pretend that Cooper flags Gimpy. We saw North Carolina nearly beat Duke in the tournament, lost by 1 point. There's a little bit of an off the radar for you.
Well, the only thing I would say about that, and I'm going to tell you why I'm not as high on this one. What is the big problem area for Mississippi State this year?
Well, they can't guard the 3.
Yeah.
And they got lit up by dribble penetration in Nashville. I watched them play Missouri, and Duke can do that too.
My problem with that matchup. Not to say it can't happen, because we were really high on this Mississippi State team not long ago. They were a 2 seed. They had a 2 seed profile, a month and a half ago or so. But a lot's changed since then. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not loving any of them. Let's call it what it is. But, yeah, we got to pick one. Georgia's interesting, but I think they have a tough first-round matchup against the Zags. So, okay, let's go for a couple other things here. Brian Max is traveling at the moment, so he is heading back east. So, Max and I we'll be we've already got all of our notes ready to do the game-by-game predictions we'll do for every single SEC team in the first round. We'll start to work on those today. So when he gets back. All right. Let's see what else we've got here. There is something I wanted to bring up on. Let's just, if we're talking like how has our opinion changed on some of this stuff, I'm going to read you a line, Chris, and I'm going to remove the team names, okay? And you tell me which game this refers to. All right? You should know instantly. Okay.
Now I'm terrified.
This is a game to consider. Tell me which game I'm talking about that involves an SEC team. Okay, I'm going to remove the name of the teams. However, Team A's ability to stretch the floor with their three-point shooting might challenge Team B's perimeter defense. The three-point line should ultimately be the factor. If Team A gets hot, Team B is in trouble. Now tell me if that's not deja vu for a certain team in the NCAA tournament against another certain team that can make threes.
Team A is SEC.
Team A, hold on. No, hold on.
Okay.
You got to keep up here. Hold on.
Okay.
No, Team A, however, Team A's ability, this is from the VSiN preview, Team A's ability, non-SEC team, to stretch the floor with their three-point shooting might challenge Team B, SEC team's perimeter defense. The three-point line should ultimately be the X factor. If Team A, non-SEC team, gets hot, Team B, SEC team, is in trouble. Now, who does that describe? To a T. We've been here before.
Oklahoma?
No. Now, let me read it to you again.
Oh,
with the teams filled in.
The SEC team would be the team in trouble, right? Okay.
Correct.
So it'd be a favorite. Go ahead.
Spoiler alert from our man Neil Blackman here. Let's now read it with the team names inserted, shall we? However, Yale's ability to stretch the floor with their three-point shooting might challenge A&M's perimeter defense. The three-point line should ultimately be the X factor. If Yale gets hot, A&M is in trouble.
Yeah.
When have we heard this before? Penn State, a couple years ago.
Yep.
Oh, man.
That was one thing that it did not change overnight, was having Yale to beat A&M.
That one did change for me because I was like, all right, let's calm down. It's not going to happen twice. Like, you know, the committee did it this way, but well, look, and I know Skyler says that could be any of the 20 matchups, I guess, but like this is though one of those like Achilles heels we've seen with A&M, and I feel like that's the one thing that is worth considering. But you want me to read you the next line? Because I think this is where it's kind of the setup. So the next line is this. But A&M has been stingy against non-conference opponents, holding them to just 28.8% from three. So in non-conference play, teams only shot 28.8% against the Aggies there. So
that was also
I think this is
ago.
one. Well, I get it, but we're talking. But Yale's not an SEC team, right? They're not have the profile of an SEC team. You have to compare it over maybe what you've seen. So that's something to think about. So
now, I heard something interesting on that game this morning. I think it was Field of 68 referred to Yale as a bully ball team, which had not occurred to me.
Oh.
And the thought was, poor Max Barr for having to miss this. But he said, I don't think that Yale can bully the bully. I don't remember if it was Randolph Childress or who it was, but I thought, well, that's an interesting take, which may be why Yale didn't pop to the top of my mind.
Oh, no.
What?
Max, what's going on? Oh, man. What? All right, Max, give me an update. Send me a text. What do we need to do here? If you need me to come up there, let me know. Send me a text on the situation.
Is that him calling a soccer game?
No, it's I don't know. I don't know what it is. But here's a note from Neil. Yeah, Yale out rebounded Purdue. Let's keep that in mind too. So everyone out there is like, okay, this can't happen. I've seen this happen before. Everybody said Yale couldn't beat Auburn either. They did. So, yeah, just worth noting there. So, anyways, all right. Okay, you
I think
guys
Max should get on his phone and do this from a parking garage.
You guys just keep doubting Yale. So I'm not going to. Not after last
Poor
year.
Max.
If you guys want me to doubt Yale after what we saw last year, that's just not going to happen. So, but there you go. I mean, like Sam, we said the same thing last year. Like literally, insert name other than A&M. Like I'm just saying. I know you guys are fired up. It's time for tournaments. You're filling out your brackets. You got your 100% stone cold lead pipe lock picks when it comes to the SEC. And we appreciate that. We told you guys, you're not going to like what you hear from us this week. We're not just going to sit here and pick every SEC team by 30. That's not our job this week. We're going to try to tell you to be weary of these teams. So otherwise, you would rather be, what's the phrase, Chris? You'd rather be over-prepared than under-prepared for these teams. So,
not that we'd ever be guilty of doing that.
No. So, that's it. So, all right. What else you got?
Do you want to just go through the brackets by region and see where we settled overnight?
I'm not making picks.
Okay.
I think we're going to wait on picks. I'm not doing that. No, it's not going to happen today. So, yeah, just not going to happen. So,
I got a question for you. Any notable shifts in the betting markets overnight, either on a game or odds to the Final Four or title or anything that caught your eye?
Let's look at the odds here and see what we have to work with. So, again, I don't really remember a lot about where these numbers were at last night, but I'll give you the updated numbers on this. Well, actually, I can go to one site that'll tell me exactly how this has been moving around here, where the lines open, where they've settled now. So let me pull that up real quick. By the way, I hope you guys are getting in on the action at Bracket Bids. Remember, a lot of stuff going on at Bracket Bids this week. Enter into that free pick'em contest we talked about yesterday with Ryan on the show. If you want how it works, he'll tell you. Go back, watch the stream. There's a nice little 10-minute segment in there talking to Ryan. You can start an auction draft league as well. Get that sign up going. And remember, he kind of explained how it worked and everything on that. You can use that promo code SE16 for that 40% off discount when you do sign up for an auction draft league. SE16, 40% off for that. So be sure to download the Bracket Bids app now, today, or visit them at bracketbids.com to get in on the action there. So, all right, the lines here. Let's take a look at where things are at on some of these. I'm like, I was trying to find them, but here's like CBI and NIT action. I got to get away from that. All right, so curiosity standpoint. A&M Yale open at 7.5. It's still 7.5 everywhere pretty much. So it's kind of stayed there with that one. Wofford, Tennessee opened at 18.5. It's 19.5 in some places at this point. Drake and Missouri opened at 4.5. That one is 5.5 now. Even moved up to 6.5 in some places in favor of Missouri. Arkansas, Kansas opened at 4.5. Now up to 5.5 in Kansas's favor.
Really?
There. Yep. That's another one that I've changed my tune on a little bit. I think we're all just kind of like Kansas isn't Kansas this year, but if you look at the matchup a little bit, there are some reasons to like the Jayhawks, but we'll talk about that in the preview video. Georgia, the Zags opened at 4.5 in favor of the Zags, now up to, 5 and 6.5 in most places in favor of the Zags there on that one. Friday's games, we go to Mississippi State, was a 1.5 point underdog, now about a 1.5 or 2 in most places. Vanderbilt St. Mary's opened at 5.5, now down to 4.5 in St. Mary's favor. So some action on the Commodores coming in. Alabama Robert Morris started at 22.5, down to 20.5 on FanDuel. So
Brand Nelson news.
Maybe. And then Oklahoma UConn still at 4.5. And Kentucky-Troy was opening at 10.5, as we said. Now it's up to 11.5 in some spots, still at 10.5 in others. Florida, Norfolk State continues to climb. Opened at 25.5, up to 27.5. There may not be a number I wouldn't put on Florida right now. So
that feels like it's going to be 104 to 53.
That's Norfolk State. SEC team should never underestimate Norfolk State.
Don't say that.
Well, I'm saying that because that's my job.
I know.
This week,
well, you're right. They
to
should
tell everybody that be on guard.
Although they
teams.
weren't in the SEC at the time, the team you're referring to.
So, yeah. All right. Well, what do you guys want to talk about? Any questions, comments? We're going to hop off here in a few. We just wanted to, again, give some more sort of day after thoughts on the bracket, all this other stuff. And, yeah, we're going to keep looking at these opponents for all these SEC teams. And, again, you'll get our more structured thoughts in each of the prediction videos, preview videos we'll do for every single game, all 14 for SEC teams. We will have a preview of coming up this week. So keep in mind, if you're an Ole Miss fan, we will not have your preview until you know your opponent. Same thing with Auburn once they know their opponent after Tuesday. So there you go. Blake's kiss of death. Who am I putting the kiss of death on? Well, I mean, it could be multiple teams. So I feel like I've kind of already done it to Tennessee because I'm so high on the draw for the Vols that I'm like, Wofford's going to come out and hit 15 threes, and, maybe that's what happens. So
why are we so opposite on that one?
What do you mean?
Well, you like their draw, and I don't.
I don't know. That's because we have different brains. Because we have different brains here, Chris.
Yeah, but like you're like Dennis Gates is your guy, but 1A is Kelvin Sampson. But
again, because I see the path for Houston and I don't love it to get to Tennessee.
Okay.
Like I'm very high on them, but
so you're counting on an upset in the top half of the bracket.
Well, I mean, you have to if you're
okay.
If you're feeling that strongly about a 2 seed. And hold on a second. I'm not saying I'm 100% in on Tennessee getting to the Final Four. Yeah. I just like their path to get to that spot to be there, right? Which, Elite Eight, something like that, I think it sets up nicely. But like we said, though, I say all that knowing that I could make the same argument for everybody else and be like, okay, Tennessee's got to go through a Mick Cronin-coached UCLA team who will be stingy to play against. They may have to play Kentucky for a third time after Kentucky's beaten them twice. They may have to play Illinois, who they beat at the buzzer, and Illinois has got one of the highest, maybe ceiling, low floor type teams in that range. They could have to play maybe a red-hot Xavier. So, again, I could do this for everybody. But I just think, for me, Tennessee, I think, is doing some things really well right now. And if Jordan Gainey plays the way he's been playing, I think that is significant for Tennessee. And so I don't hate it. But, like we said, Tennessee gets on a cold streak offensively. Anything is possible. So,
well, here's where I think it connects a little bit. I have changed leans on first-round games in the Midwest so many times. Like, I think last night I had McNeese beating Clemson. I changed that one overnight. I can't remember if I might have picked High Point to beat Purdue. I flipped that one overnight. I mean, Texas, Xavier, Illinois, God only knows who's coming out of that threesome there to play Kentucky. Some people think Troy could be pesky for Kentucky. I'm not as certain about that. UCLA, Utah State is one that I, looked at a good bit before I made a pick there. I mean, a lot of these games to me are hard to figure. So that probably accounts for some of the confusion because you can easily see some upsets and certainly the right group of ones that would give Tennessee a better path. So I guess that's it.
I give you the wrong answer, Chris. I love Sam's responses. These are great. I forgot to tell you, Chris. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to say every SEC team is going to win every game by 25 or more. That's my response. That's my response. I'm sticking to it. No one has a tough path. Everyone's going to win by 20 or more. Let's just go with that. We got to play to the crowd here after Max sent all the Kentucky fans scurrying last night with his thought on the Duke pick. But it's okay. He went the other way. But, so the alien here asks, how many SEC teams in the Sweet 16? I think last night the number we came up with was like 6. We all had different combinations maybe, but I think 6 was what we came up with.
6 is what I've got this morning.
I think most of us had 6 last night, and we had different teams, but yeah, that was kind of what we came up with. So,
hardest games to pick for you?
Well, I mean, I would say Missouri Drake is just, I know no one wants to hear that, but and I know what's going to happen. Missouri comes out and wins by 20. You guys are idiots. Why are you talking about Drake? Well, they're 30. They have their 30-win team, and there are not a lot of 30-win teams you see at the number 11 spot in the best mid-major conference in America, statistically. So that's a little bit tough, I think, just from that standpoint. But again, I still think the athleticism for Missouri, probably something that can, if Missouri gets rolling, they get the game at their tempo. It's going to be hard, I think, for Drake to keep up. But it's
Has
a tough
anybody
matchup.
done that to Drake, though?
Well, I mean, I think, again, it's like you're taking the sample size of how many games like that have they played. And, what's the common profile? How many teams have they played that are like Missouri? I mean, no one. I don't think. I don't think they played anybody like Missouri this year. They played Vanderbilt and Kansas State and Miami were the power conference teams they played. So
hang on, I want to see the highest possession game that Drake got in. I won't count York.
71, I think.
Which was Vanderbilt. And they frustrated. I remember watching that one in Charleston. Well, 74 Indiana State, but that went to overtime, so that doesn't really count.
Yeah.
Their last 4 have been 55, 59, 59, and 59 possession games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I want to see one. I want to see one more thing too. Okay, they are 360. They're dead last in tempo. In adjusted tempo, the actual tempo is a little higher than that. So I guess what that means is that Missouri Valley was a faster paced league. I don't know. And they managed to slow teams down anyway, or have I got it backwards?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the thing. Like, to me, Yale, Drake's best chance to win is just making it a half-court game, making Missouri work for 23 seconds defensively in the half court. Those kind of things. I think that's their path. But if Missouri gets out playing their game, I think they're going to be okay. But again, this is why it's the NCAA tournament. Any of these kind of matchups, like, you can have reasons why these teams can pull off the upset. So, all right, let's do this, chat. So we're going to hop off in a couple minutes here. Give me, if we're looking back on Saturday, the best first-round game is going to be what? Can be SEC or non-SEC. The best first-round game in the NCAA tournament is going to be which one? Chat, weigh in. We'll give you our picks for this one because I think there's a lot of fun ones to draw from here. But best game. So again, that whatever you want to use as your criteria there. What's going to be the game that we're talking about? That was the best game of round number 1 in the NCAA tournament. We're going to see if anyone can get this correct if we look back on it.
You got one in mind?
I do. But I'm going to pull up some from the chat here. We've got Jacob going with San Diego, Michigan. Nick's going to go with the Zags versus the Dogs versus the Dogs. Deacon's going to give a shout-out to Oklahoma, UConn. I think that's one that's not getting enough attention because of UConn.
Everybody's going to pick UConn.
Oklahoma's an interesting matchup for them. Gabe's going to go Akron versus Arizona. Mike's going to go Drake versus Missouri or Kansas versus Arkansas. T. Whitford Gators going to go Purdue, High Point. Sam, like Kansas, Arkansas. Malik's going to go the same with Deacon. Great comment here. Optimistic Rattlesnake's going to go Vandy versus St. Mary's. Our guards aren't peas. UConn versus Oklahoma. Sam's got Yale A&M. Carter's got Oregon Liberty. These are great matchups. All these matchups. Give me all of them.
Liberty is super interesting, I think.
Creighton Louisville?
Yeah.
All right. Which one you picking?
I'm going Kansas, Arkansas. And I'm kind of intrigued there to see what role does Boogie Flynn have or not have.
We've seen Arkansas and Kansas play some exciting NCAA tournament games in recent years. That's a good one. Colorado Kings going Georgia versus the Zags. Jared, BYU, VCU. Pooh Bear's going to go Oklahoma, UConn. So, Skylar's calling it right now. Lipscomb upset over Iowa State.
Skylar, hope you're right.
Desperado's on the way with jumper cables to help out Max Barr. If you're not, I am.
Max.
All right. So you went. What was your pick again? Sorry,
I picked Kansas, Arkansas.
Kansas, Arkansas. Okay. I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna give you my short list, and then I'm gonna pick my winner. I think Louisville Creighton's one that I'm gonna put on there, on the short list.
Yep.
I'm also gonna put Oklahoma UConn on there. And the third, I'll trim the list to 3. I'm going to go Clemson McNeese. I think that's one that I'm interested by. But I think the one I'm going to pick, and maybe I'm wrong about this, the one I'm going to pick is Oklahoma and UConn. Because I think it's going to get a lot of attention. And there's something about this one, I think, because Oklahoma, I don't hate this matchup for them. Not saying they can't lose, but I don't hate the matchup on paper. So I'll go Oklahoma.
There was something in that one that caught my eye too, and I don't remember if it was. I think maybe UConn. Well, I'll look it up quickly. Probably should save this for the preview, but we got an audience.
Well,
I'll
how about
throw
we
it
do
out.
that? We'll
do that. There was something in there that stuck out. I'll tell you another one. And we haven't talked about this one at all because we don't know who it is. But I think Texas Xavier winner against Illinois is potentially fascinating.
Yeah, I think Texas Xavier will be fun as a first round or first 4 game. I think that'll be.
We haven't talked to any about that one.
Well, because we're gonna talk about it in the preview. We're gonna
right.
That will be the first game we will. That's the thing. Like, we're not going to feel guilty about not talking about these matchups. We're literally about to spend 15 minutes on every single matchup when we record these videos coming up today and tomorrow. So, yeah. So don't feel guilty on that.
All right, give me your 14, 15, or 16 upset. Did you take one?
Lipscomb.
Do you have one
Lipscomb.
that maybe you didn't take but you watched? Lipscomb, really? Okay, that would be one.
That
What
would be
about what about Montana, Wisconsin?
I like that one initially. Again, I think there's a stigma on Wisconsin that I don't know if this is the team that I would put that on. Lipscomb is the team I would pick of the 14, 15, 16s.
Well, and I know I value this more than you do, but Montana plays at altitude, and that game's in Denver. Plus, Wisconsin's got a flight. Well, Montana does too, but they won't be as long.
I would go, I go Lipscomb, and I know Sam's saying Wofford to hate on his Tennessee Vols, but I did mention the reasons why the 3-point shot for Wofford is something to keep an eye on. But
when you pick brackets, do you even look at 16-1s and 15-2s? Because I just I take those two and move on and spend my time elsewhere.
Well, it depends. Like, if you're doing a bracket challenge, you have to be more strategic. But like, I don't really care about that kind of stuff. Like, I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to fill out a bracket based on matchups. But no, like, if you're trying to win a challenge, I don't think you ever do that unless you're just completely sold, because you pick a 1, 2, or 3 to get upset in the first round, right? All of a sudden, you're just the statistical probabilities are not in your favor if they win. Like if one of those teams, keeps advancing, then you're in trouble. But
how many brackets do you fill out?
Well, I've got this is what we call the written bracket of integrity. I fill out one of these every year. Today will be the day I fill that out, and this is the one I hold myself to. But then, of course, if I'm planning to win money here, I'll fill out as many as I need to try to win the cash. So, but no, this is the one. So you guys remind me, this will be the one that I will refer to as my bracket of choice anytime we're talking about the bracket this year. And I will also
rule is you get
this will be what I use for the video too. So when we do our video, I'll be using this one. So
my rule is you get one real bracket like that, and then the others are like lottery tickets.
Sure.
It's like you can pick whatever you want and hope your numbers cash.
Sure. I think that's it. So all right. There we go.
Any parting thoughts?
No. If you want more thoughts, 3.5 hours worth of content yesterday. Live show. Go check it out. We put the timestamps on there. And, you can check out our thoughts on everything then. Can we change our opinions on this now? We'll probably change our opinions more when we get to the actual full bracket preview. We will have previews for every single game. We're going to start working on those as soon as Max gets back. I got to call Max right now, see what's going on, see what we can do to help him. And then, we'll start doing our previews and all that. And my guess is you will get a lot of those coming out tomorrow. I don't know if we'll get all 14 out tomorrow, but if we do, and you're like, man, these guys have given me 14 notifications today, it's March. That's how it works. So there you go.
It's the most fun time of the year. We're here for it. We've got a lot of stuff going on. We got basketball. We got baseball. We may try to squeeze some baseball stuff in this week. We'll have to talk that one over and see what we can do. But either way, cannot wait for the tournament to start, which starts, by the way, tomorrow night, 5:40 Central, St. Francis and Alabama State in the 16 game, 8:10 North Carolina and San Diego State. Also in Dayton, first SEC game Wednesday, 8:10 Central, Xavier and Texas in Dayton. For Blake Lovell, for Stranded Max Bar, I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching our basketball content here at Southeastern 16. God bless you. Stay safe. We'll see you again soon.